You know, 2 years ago when we started to outfit the van, I was completely stumped. I was looking at all these exterior accessories and looking at the price tags going, man, is it really necessary that we have a roof rack, a ladder, suspension? What about the flares? Are all of these things really practical and something that we're actually gonna use? And I feel like when you're outfitting a van like this, you don't know what you don't know until you're actually using it. So let me tell you how we outfitted our van, and let me tell you what I think of each of these things 2 years later. And hopefully this helps you with your next build. Let's start with something that's kind of a non-negotiable for me, and that is suspension. See, the stock suspension is great when the van is, well, stock. But as soon as you start adding weight, you really feel the limits of that suspension. So we went back and forth between the Agile Rip kit and the VanCompass kits. We ultimately landed on the VanCompass Stage 4.3 kit, and we've really, really liked it. What I love about it is you have the ability to adjust the settings based on how you're driving. So if we're on pavement, we're on the highway, we're cruising down the 395, it's really windy, we put it in the stiffest setting. And as soon as we go off pavement, we put it in the softer setting, which allows us to explore and have a more comfortable ride. And if we're just cruising around town or kind of like a mixed terrain, we just leave it right in the middle in setting number 2. If I could give it a rating, I'd give it, from a practicality perspective, a 10 out of 10. I think it's a very worthwhile and practical upgrade. In terms of aesthetics, well, maybe a 2 or a 3, because unless you know what you're looking for, you don't really see the suspension. You would, however, notice that my van is a little bit higher and has a bit more ground clearance than others. But again, it's kind of one of those, like, if you know things, but otherwise you can't really tell. While wheels and tires do change the look of the van, I'm not gonna say that they're a necessity by any means. They do, however, improve the ride quality as well as handling. Now, we went with the Black Rhino Arsenal wheels, 17-inch wheels with 275/70/17 BFG K02s, just like everybody else did in 2020. But you know what, I think it's a really good look. I knew going into it that just about everybody else who built a van during that time had these wheels. When it comes to practicality, I'd give these a 7 or 8 out of 10. And when it comes to aesthetics, I'd give the wheels and tires a 10 out of 10. I really do like the way that the van looks with the wheels and tires. Now, you may notice on our van that we have a handful of lights. The first thing you're gonna notice are these big, huge KC highlights on the top that are mounted on the roof rack. Now, these things are incredible. They're so freaking bright. Now, they're practical. I mean, I guess if you're mobbing through the desert in the middle of the night, yes, they could be very, very useful. But for everyday driving, you're rarely going to turn these on. I will give a nod to the KC highlights though, because when we were driving home from Wyoming this last September and we were between Montpelier and Preston, Idaho, we came upon a huge herd of deer, and I had the KC highlights on. They were lighting up the entire road for what felt like miles, and I was able to see that herd of deer long before I needed to stop. If I had been using just the regular stock halogen lights, might have been a little bit dicey, so I'm really grateful that I had them at that point. From a practicality perspective, I'd give them a 3 or 4 out of 10. They have been useful occasionally, but for everyday driving, they're really not. And from an aesthetics perspective, I'd give them a 9 or 10 out of 10. I think they look great, and I think they change the look of the van. You'll also notice that we have a second set of lights that are mounted much lower. They're actually on a VanSpeed kind of like little front bumper, which is also very practical. And these are the Baja Squadron lights. And I've got 2 sets. I've got a set of clear spotlights, and I've got a set of amber floodlights, and they're really, really nice, and they complement the crappy Mercedes halogen lights really, really well. There have been times when we've been driving home from like Glacier Point out in Yosemite, it's been pitch black. I can flip on those ambers and I can see everything that's on the sides of me. So I can see deer, animals, whatever might be coming at me. And they're low enough to where you can use them on the road without really blinding oncoming drivers. So I think these are incredibly practical. I'd give them a 10 out of 10 on the practicality scale, and I'd give them probably a 6 out of 10 on the aesthetics. I don't really love the look of them. I think the placement of them is kind of a little bit weird. If I could put them somewhere else or they were a little bit bigger, they'd probably look a bit better. The roof rack. Now, this is one that I added to the build at the last minute, and you know, in some ways I'm really glad that I did. In other ways, I'm kind of, you know, second guessing my decision. I'll never forget though, during the build, when we got to that phase and they added the roof rack, just how much it changed the look of the van. Now, from a practicality perspective, we haven't really used it that much. Sure, we've eaten up there, our solar panels mounted to the top. No one's ever slept up there. We've never stored anything or traveled with anything on top of the van, but it's kind of a fun feature. So from a practicality perspective, I'd probably give it a 4 or 5 out of 10. I'm sure some people out there can find a huge use for it. That's great. For us, we haven't really used it a ton. From an aesthetics perspective, I'd give it an 8 or 9 out of 10. I think it really enhances the look of the van. Now, if you've got a roof rack, you gotta figure out how to get on top of that roof. And so we looked at a handful of different ladders. And one of the big things for me is that I didn't want a ladder on the side of the van. I didn't want something that was gonna snag. I didn't want something that was gonna create extra drag. So when I saw the Owl Vans ladder and tire carrier combo, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I really like how it's tucked away in the back. You don't really notice it unless you're looking in the rearview mirror or you're behind the van. And it just looks really clean. Climbing up it and using it is pretty practical. The steps are round, so they get a hair slippery at times. But look, our two little girls can climb up it, no problem. So I think functionally, it works really well. This is probably right up there with the suspension. I mean, the practicality on this is like a 9 or 10 out of 10. And aesthetically, man, if you're gonna get a ladder, I just think this is the way to go. So I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. Side steps were another one of those accessories that I was on the fence about during the initial planning phases. I just didn't see a reason to have them, and I felt like everybody could get out of the van fairly easily. The reality is, when you add the suspension and wheels and tires, it's pretty hard to get in and out of the van, especially if you're my wife, who's about 5'5", and you're my kids, who are 5 and 7 years old. So the side steps have proven to be very functional and very practical. Aesthetically, I'm kind of on the fence. I like the way that they look. I think it frames the van pretty well, considering they're on the bottom and you've got the roof rack on top. But there's something about having the side steps that almost makes the van look like it's a little bit lower to the ground than it actually is. I know that's just visual. I know we don't really lose any ground clearance, but for whatever reason, when I look at it and I look at other vans that don't have side steps, I kind of prefer the look of the van without side steps. That's just me. Practicality for our needs, I'd give them a 9 or 10 out of 10. And aesthetically, yeah, here's where I'm a little bit torn. I'll give them a 7 or an 8, but I can see both sides of the argument here. The flares from Flarespace are one of my favorite accessories of the van, and I think they do quite a bit to the interior as well as the exterior. Now, we originally looked into the flares by Flarespace because we wanted to use the Moab Adventure Wagon bed, and we wanted just a couple extra inches on each side so that we could sleep sideways. Fast forward 2 years, and I don't think we're gonna be using the Adventure Wagon Moab bed for much longer, simply because we wanna have more space in the back, and we're gonna go with something else in the front for our little kids. But the flares are still incredibly useful. They add quite a bit of room to the inside of your van, and having those 1033 windows really opens up the van. And then you go to the outside, and I think it really breaks up the look of the van. I like the way they kind of come out in the back. I think it looks really good. While these may not be a necessity, I think from a practicality perspective, I'd give them an 8 out of 10. And if you're planning to sleep sideways, I'd give them a 10 out of 10. And aesthetically, I'd give them a 9 or 10 out of 10. I think they look really good, and I can't imagine having my van without them. It's my opinion that not every single accessory needs to make sense, and your needs are gonna be different from my needs and vice versa. So build out a van how you want it in a way that you're gonna be able to enjoy it and get the most out of it. I think you kind of have to look at each of these accessories from a practicality, aesthetics, and budget standpoint and figure out what works best for you. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So hopefully now, after having used our van for 2 years and sharing some of my thoughts, that this has been helpful for you. Anyways, until next time.